Welcome to another episode of Cutlure Cast, in which Dustin Homan is going to be talking with Gary Klopfenstein. He is a project manager with Trimble, and they recently went on a trip throughout Europe, and he's going to be sharing that trip with us. So stay tuned. Hey, welcome back to another episode of Cutlure Cast. Dustin Homan, who's a education project manager, is going to be talking with Gary Klopfenstein. Dustin, it is always a pleasure allowing me to be on your show.
Well, Patrick, thank you, and I appreciate the opportunity to continue to host Cutlure Cast, to let some of our viewers know I've had a change in my job title and company, and I work for Education Projects, which is a consulting firm, and I'm loving what I'm doing. But Patrick was generous enough to keep me on board, so I'm thankful for that.
I've said this many times to many people. This is perhaps my favorite of all shows.
You don't say that on every show, do you?
Just to the ones I live on. No, really. I really like the culture that you have, and the guests that you brought in today with some of the pictures is just fantastic. Would you like to? Would you like? Go ahead and introduce him.
Our guest today is Gary Klopfenstein. Gary's a product launch manager at Trimble, and he's going to talk a little bit about the company and his role with the company, as well as some of the travels that he got to do with Trimble. I do want to just to inform everyone, Gary is my best friend. He was the best man in my wedding, so I hope you can see that Gary and I have a great relationship, and that this is going to be a really fun Cutlure Cast. So, Gary, thank you for joining us from Colorado. I know it's a little early for you, but tell us a little bit about your background, where you grew up, some of the organizations that you were involved in.
Yeah, of course. So I grew up in Northwest Ohio on a row crop farm, and was involved in 4-H, FFA, went to school at Ohio State University, got a degree in sustainable plant systems, specializing in agronomy. I also have a new golden retriever puppy he has his voice heard on today's show. And I started working in sales, and then I took a role with precision agriculture for a company called Trimble, and now I live out here in Colorado.
Gary, tell the folks a little bit about your role now. You've recently kind of finished an introductory phase with Trimble, and now we're in a full-time position. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so I had an opportunity with Trimble. It was a 2-year rotational program. Every 6 months, I worked with a new team and had a new project, and that 2 years ended this past July. And I have now moved into a new role called the product launch manager for the ag division of Trimble, and I help orchestrate, I guess, with working with the product management team, the product managers, and the marketing team and engineering and sales, and help launch the products that they develop. So it's a really cool opportunity, and I'm really excited.
Gary, did you do any study abroads when you were a student in the College of Food, Ag, Environmental Sciences?
So during my time college, I did go to Argentina. It wasn't through an official program through the university, but it was 10 days in Argentina.
So I'm excited, not only because I know Gary, but also because we haven't had a guest like Gary on this program. We tend to focus on students, specifically college students who are at Ohio State, who have gone on study abroad, and to highlight their experience. And today's Cutlure Cast provides an opportunity to show how, opportunities that started back with Gary in Northwest Ohio and 4-H and FFA that led to Ohio State, and now he's at Trimble, a global company where he's had the opportunity to continue to travel abroad. And so that travel bug is something that I hope today's program will show is something that can last a lifetime. So let's dig into our photos and get Gary telling us a little bit about his trip to multiple countries in Europe. And Sarah, if you'll show the map that we have. Gary, provide for us a little bit of background about what took you to Europe, and then tell us where all you went.
Yeah. So during my last rotation, I was looking for a group who specializes in corrections that provides a signal to our users to give them pinpoint accuracy. And one of the main offices where the engineering is in Munich, Germany. And so starting off in February, with the project, I needed to go to Munich and meet the team. So that would be where the home green button is in the middle. And then during that time, I went to Austria to talk to some customers. And all of these visits were with customers. That was the point of the call is, Trimble is customers at the center of everything we do. And so to do that, we need to get their voice of customer so we can enhance our products better. And so we went to Austria, and then I came back for a second time, and then went to Hungary and Ukraine and Luxembourg and then Spain. And I then extended my trip to Portugal with some vacation days.
So as an average consumer, where might I interact with some of Trimble's technology?
So probably on your drive in today to work is on a lot of construction sites, Trimble is used in the machine control. And machine control would be the excavators, the compactors, some of those machines on construction sites, building your buildings, building your roads. Then on the other side, that's producing your food in agriculture, helping farmers be more sustainable, use less products. So they're on multiple ends of the spectrum. We're also in geospatial. As a person interacting with Trimble, probably your opportunity would be on a construction site or talking to a farmer who's using our technology.
But I hear you saying the food I'm eating every day, the roads that I'm driving on every day, very well could have been, been paved or produced using Trimble
technology. Yes, of course.
Awesome. Appreciate you sharing that. Okay, well, in every Culture Cast, we like to show the flags, and this was all inspired, Gary. One of the first Culture Casts we did was right around the time of the Olympics and watching the opening ceremony with the flags, and so we continued this tradition. So today is unique because we're highlighting multiple countries. So we're going to do a little pop quiz here. Gary and Patrick, we're going to start in the upper left-hand corner. Let's see how well you do with naming the countries where each of these flags come from. So upper left-hand corner, any guesses?
I'll let Gary mention about Spain.
So Spain, that's correct, is the first one. The middle one on the top row.
Ukraine?
That's
Italy.
the one on the far right. So
Italy.
Gold.
Hungary. It's Hungary then.
As an Ohio State fan, we don't ever want to see those colors together. But that's Ukraine's. And the one in the middle is actually Hungary. Bottom left.
Sweden. No, I don't know.
It does. Oh, it's just, you're on the same continent.
Oh, Norway?
That one's Portugal.
Portugal.
The other one's gonna be on the bottom row, and that's Germany.
Yeah, Germany in the middle.
I'll cap us off. The one on the bottom right there is Austria. So Sarah, if you go to the next slide, there are answers. Viewers, if you were following along, hopefully you did a little bit better than Gary and Patrick.
Well,
Yeah.
that is
These
why
are all
I'm.
some of the countries that we're going to highlight today. So let's get into these photos. The next photo that we have is a photo Gary took at an airport. And Gary, you kind of already summed up a little bit, but just tell us about Trimble's footprint across the globe and how that plays into agriculture.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'll talk about Trimble company-wide. So, there's over 11,000 employees. We're in 35 countries around the world. And for the Trimble Ag Division, particularly, we have some big offices around the country, and we have we have a channel that also sells our technology throughout the world. So almost safe to say we're one of the largest agricultural sales channels in the world, and so our footprint is pretty large. And that's where my role comes in. Is I'm a product launch manager, but it really should be like hyphenated global, because that's helping launch the products in the APAC region, Europe, Latin America, and as well as North America. So yeah, our products are all throughout the world,
which affords you the opportunity to be able to travel to some of these amazing places. So let's get into some more of your photos. We're going to focus some of these photos here towards the first part are architectural photos. So Gary, talk to us about what we're seeing here.
Yeah, so the time of the year would be February, late February. We're in Munich. This is Munich Olympic Garden. The Olympics was held there, the Summer Olympics of 1972. And this structure, at least to me, I thought it was going to come up and it looked very web-like, but it's actually all steel and like fiberglass. So it does not flex. It's very rigid. It's just made to look like almost like a tent. But there's solid beams, which I was not expecting. It's a really cool infrastructure. And around this area, there's also what it's used now is almost like a amphitheater, like a theater. We were walking through this park. There was a concert going on, and it sounded like they were having a great time. So it was pretty cool.
So the next photo, Gary, I think one thing that's so unique about Europe is it has obviously such a much longer history in terms of structures and architecture than maybe we would find here in the U.S. So you go from a more modern building that you just showed to this. What do we see here?
Yeah, 100%. So we were on our way. It was early morning in February. We were in Austria, and right before we had about 25 minutes to burn before our meeting, and there was a church nearby, and so I was like, hey, let's go to the church. And we walked in, and I was surprised. Most churches, when you walk in the United States, it's warm, like temperature wise. This just felt like the doors were shut, and it pretty much was 5 degrees warmer than outside. And I looked at our local guy, and he said, oh, go to the next picture. He's like, we have heaters underneath the seat, so that's what keeps us warm when we're at the church. And I thought, I love it. That's awesome. I kind of put two and two together. It's like, this is really cold on wooden benches, but they have heaters underneath, so it makes it okay.
Some European ingenuity there. It's interesting to see, and this is a great example, when you go to other countries, how different people think about solving problems, right? So here in the U.S., a church, we just heat the whole building, where, yep, as you're showing here, the solution to this problem was to put the heaters underneath the seats. Mm-hmm. Maybe that's where the term toasty buns or hot pots. Who knows? So let's keep
it looked like they were pretty robust heaters, that's for sure.
Yeah. So tell us, Gary, what we see here.
Yeah, so this would be my starting of the second trip. I'm in Hungary, Budapest, and this was I was in the river, and this is their parliament building, where the government makes all the decisions. And it was a very pretty building, and it's very big as well. You can see how big the picture, or how big that building is in the picture, but it was massive. It was a very large building.
Gary, could you tell a difference when you would travel into a different country? Looking at some of this architecture, it looks, somewhat familiar. It almost seems like maybe you'd forget, oh, I'm in Hungary now instead of Austria. Did you ever have those feelings?
Not necessarily with the buildings. It was maybe more so just the really subtle things of maybe what the government spends money on, like sidewalks, how nice the roads are, kind of more of the infrastructure, maybe not so much the buildings, but there was some subtle differences, sure.
If you go to the next photo, Sarah, I think you can clearly see a difference in some of the architecture here. So what country are we in here, and what is this?
Yes. So this is in Portugal, and this was right outside my Airbnb. This was on vacation days, and I walked up, it was a museum / this is where they used to have bullfights, which was really cool. Me being cheap, I didn't want to pay the $10 to get in and tour the rest of it because they just had a little entrance area, and I read most of those signs, but it was really cool. And it was a popular stop where you saw people taking pictures.
Interesting thing is that Portugal has a mixture of both Italian, Moors, Muslims, and Christian, and you can see it in the architecture that you've been looking at. It's sort of a mixture that's a dominant theme within the Portugal area.
Yes, yeah, there was definitely a theme.
Huh.
That's interesting, Patrick. I wasn't aware of that.
Yes.
So we've taken some time to look at some of the different architecture, and we're going to get into my favorite portion of Culture Cast, and that's always the food. So we've got some very unique food experiences that Gary has shared with us. However, this first photo is probably of no surprise. Gary, what do we see here?
You see Germany in a nutshell right there. I guess without the sausage. So we're at the Hofburg House. It's downtown Munich. It's one of their popular beer gardens. A coworker took me there, and the thing that was probably the most impressive about this, the beer was okay, was the fact that when we ordered beers, the waiters were all it looked like they were lifting. They were all relatively jacked. And because those glasses, when you carry about 4 or 5 of them, I mean, it's heavy. It's not just, that glass itself probably weighed 2 pounds, and then you fill 28 ounces or whatever, and it's a pretty heavy glass. So those guys, I'm sure their arms had to get tired towards the end of the night carrying all those heavy glasses around.
Now, is the beer cold?
No.
So is that just in the place that you went, or is that sort of a traditional kind of thing throughout Austria?
I believe that's somewhat common to have warm beer in Germany. I know, Dustin, you've been to Germany before. I think most of the time the beer is relatively room temperature or a little bit below.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one thing I vividly remember about drinking beer when I was over there too is, people drink it. It's part of their social fabric. I think here we tend to say let's go get a drink to blow off some steam. In Germany, it's almost like having water at every meal here. That's just something that they drink. They don't necessarily drink it to get intoxicated. It's just part of their social fabric and their culture. So, yes, it's just interesting different nuances between temperature that it's served and how it's served.
Well, I know that in the United States, we do insult some countries because I love ice in everything that I drink, unless, of course, it's hot coffee or something that's meant to be hot.
That's a good point, Patrick. You don't, and in Europe too. I don't know, Gary, did you see or did you have much cold water at places?
Ooh. You're in Germany, just get a beer.
But the temperature-wise, I agree with you, Patrick. I don't think it's very common in Europe for water to be served cold or with ice, like you're saying. So,
even soft drinks. In some places they become extremely offended if you ask for more than 1 cube of ice. And that I found rather interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. So, from the way that drinks are served and consumed, if we go to the next photo, Sarah, even the way that food is prepared and served and laid out, you can see is different. So, Gary, tell us what we see here.
Yeah. The time I went when I was in Hungary was the Easter weekend. That on Sunday, and so Monday was off for most of the country and neighboring countries, and so it was kind of like a festival going on. A lot of street vendors and food available. So you just kind of walked up and said what you wanted, and it was really cool. There was, I believe, the next picture as well kind of shows there were all kinds of options. This is like salmon that's cooked. It was, I believe, it was either walnut or oak wood, and they just had the salmon strapped up against it with a fire in between, which was pretty cool. I've never seen that done before. And then they would just take that off, and then they would give you fresh fish, hot fish, like right off the fire. It was a really cool experience. There was a ton of people there as well, so that was I think if I would have went on a normal business trip, not during a potential holiday, I wouldn't have been able to experience kind of like the Easter festivals and music and all the different types of food available. It was really.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, Gary. I think so many of us have rich family traditions where we can't imagine, getting outside of those traditions around the holidays. But you just provided a great example of what kind of unique experience you were able to have because you got out of that family tradition. I'm sure your mama missed you on Easter, but look at the amazing photos and stories that you have to tell because of that. So let's continue down this food train. Tell us what you ate here.
Yeah, so this was in Baja, or B-A-J-A, I'm saying Baja, but it's in Hungary. It was about 2 hours south of Budapest, and this was in a small little town, and it was chopped up chicken and mushrooms kind of in a gravy, and then like a rice bowl. It was really good. It was either this or fish soup, and this sounded a little bit better than fish soup. I had another 10 days in Europe or 11 days in Europe, so I went with something a little bit more that sounded okay to eat.
Was this a standard? Was that a standard plating in Hungary? Would you find rice with some kind of stew typically?
Yeah, I probably had 6 or 7 meals in Hungary, and most of them had a side of rice with them.
Okay, so moving on to the next photo. This is where things get a little unique. So our next couple photos, Gary, lead us through your dining experience. This is all at the same place.
Yeah, we're starting with this picture. This is now lunch in Ukraine, and it was very unique. So before we got to this point here, there was about 8 other people at the table, and I think overall, I picked up the check, and we had four courses, and it fed 8 people, and I think my bill was $70. Appetizers of 3 different kinds. We had then a kind of like, this was like your starter, and then we had another like sampler, and then a soup, and then we had something afterwards. So it was relatively cheap, but walking into the place, we probably went about 100 yards underground, and then it was all dark, and then there was the door was this massive, maybe 8 or 10 foot door that had skulls on it, and I was just like, where are we going? Like we open it up, we go in. It was a very lively atmosphere, but this dish here is like a noodle that had cottage cheese in it. It was just okay, but I was 2 people that were visiting the country, and the other 6 were I guess we were their guests. They were hosting us, and it was you don't say yuck in that type of act.
No. And you eat what's put in front of you.
Yes.
Oh, ice cream.
Yeah, dessert?
No, not at all. This comes out, and this is like the second thing I see on the table, so I knew it couldn't be ice cream. And so during this, I would wait to see how others would eat particular plates to make sure I was doing it correctly. And I see a guy just grab that waffle cone, and it has a bunch of butter inside. And then he shaved some of the butter off onto his plate, and I was like, all right, I can do that. No one took the cone and left it on the plate, so that was a no-no apparently. You can't have the whole stick of butter on your plate.
This is so much more elegant than this like slab of butter that we put out at our dinner table here in the US, right? This is so beautifully presented and elegant, but Had you not watched what was going on, you could have had probably an even better story to tell. You were mowing down on this thing.
Yes, and you don't also see probably what my dad might have done is you take the cone, since it's already got the butter. It's not a stick of butter where you can use it as one utensil. You use a utensil to take the butter off. You don't take the cone and then dab it on your bread. I didn't see that either.
Yeah, but again, so these stories illuminate just some of the different nuances and the cultures, and something as simple as spreading butter is different in Ukraine than the way that we do it here in the U.S. So I appreciate you sharing these food adventures with us, Gary. What was one of your favorite meals that you had there?
Ooh. You know, I would probably have to say the street food vendor was probably one of the most, I guess, when we think of eating food, it's more than just the food, but the experience. And I was able to talk to a couple. I joined a table because it was a bunch of standing, kind of like a cocktail hour, but they just had them spread out through the street. So I just joined a table with some other people and was able to have a conversation with them. They were from northern Germany, and they travel a lot. And then I talked to some people that were from China, and I talked to some people that were from Spain. Since it was a holiday, there was a lot of other people from other countries that were there, so it was really cool to talk with them. So that was probably one of my favorite, because I was like in the center of all these people, and I was having a great meal and being able to talk to a lot of people from different backgrounds.
Hey, Dustin and Gary, since we have less than 2 minutes, I wanted time. Dustin has a favorite question that he always asks his guests at this time, and I wanted to make sure we get that question in and the answer.
Sure.
All right.
Thanks, Patrick. So, Gary, I like to end our Culture Cast by asking, why should other people visit the countries that you visited?
So you should travel to Europe to get exposure and understand where people come from. I know in the news we hear about what's going on in Europe, and you don't understand what their perspective is until you've been there and understand their culture. And it's just a great opportunity and to have those experiences and to see different architecture, different beliefs, different types of food. You might not even know you like warm beer in Germany, dry pretzels. So it's just a great opportunity and push you outside your comfort zone.
Well, thank you for sharing that, Gary. And Gary had some beautiful photos, and Sarah, if you'll end us on, there's a photo of a beautiful park with some beautifully manicured bushes. And remind me, Gary, from what country was this?
This was in Portugal.
In Portugal. So as Gary said, and he illuminated this throughout the Culture Cast today, different ways of spreading butter, different ways of solving problems, different ways of presenting parks. Just amazing to be able to take that in. So Gary, I want to thank you for your time. Thank you for getting up early and sharing these beautiful photos with you. I know you still have to go into work today, but hopefully this was a little bit of motivation to continue doing what you're doing and the great work you're doing at Trimble. Patrick and Sarah, thank you for everything that you do behind the scenes.
Yeah, I wanted to mention our magician, Sarah Swanson. Sarah has made us look good. Don't you think, Dustin and Gary?
Absolutely. She always does. I'm very thankful for that.
Yes. And of course, your little doggy.
Thank you, Simba. Yes.
Simba.
Gary's dog. Yeah, well, I'd like to just end, Patrick, to our Culture Cast viewers, thank you for joining us and for going along on this adventure as we explore another part of this wonderful world that we live in.
Have a great day.